shooting dope. Who don't know the meaning of words? I know so. I need bullets.
While MTV was blasting Michael Jackson across America, the most revolutionary hip-hop ever made was literally underground. Pressed on 12-inch vinyl in basement studios with handwritten labels, nobody outside New York clubs knew these records existed. But here's the thing, everything hip-hop is today, everything that made rap the dominant force in music, started with these 13 albums that the mainstream completely ignored. Let's bring them back. Intense number 1, Rakim. Listen.
Now to test to see if I got pulled, hit the studio, cause I'm paid in full.
We're starting with the absolute foundation. In 1987, this Queens MC pressed a 12-inch single called Paid in Full. No major label, no radio play, no music video, nothing. Just a record with handwritten labels and a production partner named Eric B. This single had zero chart presence. It didn't chart on Billboard Hot 100, it didn't chart on the rap chart, because the rap chart didn't even exist yet. But in the clubs, in the Bronx, in Queens, Rakim was rapping circles around everybody else. His rhyme schemes were so complex, so layered with internal rhymes and multisyllabic wordplay, that DJs didn't even know how to market him. They thought he was too difficult for mainstream rap. Rakim reportedly sold approximately 40 to 80,000 copies of that vinyl single, all underground circulation. No retail chains, no Billboard tracking, just pure word of mouth. Today, every complex rapper from Big Daddy Kane to Nas to Kendrick Lamar, they all learned how to rap from what Rakim invented in that basement studio in '87. He changed the entire language of hip-hop, and the mainstream didn't even notice until 3 years later. Number 2, KRS-One. When this Bronx legend released Criminal Minded with Beatdown Productions in 1987,
this got the rock and I are mentally minded. In other words, we're both criminal minded.
he wasn't trying to make radio hits, he was trying to change how hip-hop thought about itself. This album introduced something radical, the idea that rap could be conscious, that it could address street violence, police brutality, and systemic racism instead of just talking about parties and girls. Mainstream radio rejected it completely. Why? Because radio only wanted party music. Radio wanted Run DMC. Radio wanted LL Cool J yelling into microphones. Radio didn't want a philosopher named KRS-One explaining the knowledge of self in 16 bars. Documented, the album stayed completely underground, reportedly selling 50 to 100,000 copies among hip-hop heads only. But here's what happened. KRS-One didn't get mainstream attention until the early 1990s, and when he did, he'd already established the entire blueprint for conscious rap. Every socially aware rapper, from Common to Talib Kweli to Mos Def, they're all standing on KRS-One's shoulders. He just had to wait for hip-hop culture to grow up enough to listen. Number 3, Slick Rick. Before there was a Slick Rick mainstream hit, before he became a household name, this London-born MC released The Great Adventures of Slick Rick in 1988.
They did the job, money came with ease, but one couldn't stop, it's like he had a disease.
And it peaked at number 183 on the Billboard 200. Wait, you're thinking that's a chart placement? It's not. That was commercial failure. It charted for approximately 2 weeks before disappearing completely. But here's the story angle. Slick Rick did something that had never been done before in hip-hop. He turned rap into storytelling. He created narratives. Songs like Children's Story weren't just bars over beats. They were actual short films. They were movies you could see in your head. This man was operating on a completely different level than everybody else in the underground. And you know who noticed? Nas. Years later, when Nas made Illmatic in 1994, he studied Slick Rick's storytelling approach the way a film student studies Scorsese. Today, narrative rap is everywhere. But it started with this album that sold barely 25,000 copies in 1988. Number 4, Ultramagnetic MCs. These 4 MCs out of New York released Critical Beatdown in 1988 on a label called Next Plateau Records.
With the rhythm and as your head bop, I'm hyped for the Critical Beatdown.
And when I say underground, I mean underground. This record had 0 chart presence, it had 0 radio play, it had approximately 30 to 60,000 copies pressed on vinyl only, no cassette, no CD, just vinyl going to record store bins and DJ crates. Fascinated, but the production was insane. DJ Mo Love and Sed Gee were layering multiple samples into single tracks, creating these dense, chaotic, almost abstract soundscapes that shouldn't have worked, but absolutely did. Connected hip-hop historians credit Ultramagnetic MCs with creating the blueprint that Wu-Tang Clan would perfect 5 years later. The abstract production. the cryptic lyrics, the experimental approach, it all started here, in this completely forgotten 1988 album. This is a record that only serious hip-hop nerds know about, and that's exactly why it belongs on this list. Number 5, The Jungle Brothers. In 1988, Mike D and DJ Sammy B released Straight Out the Jungle on an independent label.
Right through it. And when I'm on the mic, I never stutter or stumble because I'm a jungle brother. Straight out the jungle.
And this album was different. It wasn't just boom bap. It wasn't just party rap. These brothers were mixing acid jazz with hip hop. They were sampling complex jazz records and layering them with rap bars. The mainstream music industry had no idea what to do with this. Jazz and hip hop together? That wasn't supposed to work. But it did. The Jungle Brothers proved it could work. Cultural_impact. And you know what happened? 1 year later, literally 1 year, De La Soul heard this album and said, "This is possible." De La Soul went into the studio and made 3 Feet High and Rising, which became a classic. But without the Jungle Brothers' 1988 blueprint, De La Soul might never have existed. The Jungle Brothers were supposedly selling around 50 to 80,000 copies of this record through underground channels. But the mainstream was completely silent. That is until decades later when hip-hop historians started connecting the dots and realized, wait, everything started here. Number 6, A Tribe Called Quest. Now before Midnight Marauders, before Can I Kick It, before they became a household name, before Q-Tip and Phife Dawg became legends, there was this. In 1989, this collective released a single called Footprints. Just a 12-inch single, underground circulation only. A Tribe Called Quest wasn't famous yet. They were just 4 kids from Brooklyn experimenting with something nobody else was doing. Produced, Ali Shaheed Muhammad was producing these instrumental tracks that sounded like nothing else in hip-hop. They sounded like jazz, but not the complex jazz that the Jungle Brothers were doing. This was something more experimental, something more cerebral. The single reportedly sold approximately 25 to 45,000 copies in underground circulation. No major label backing, no promotion, just pure curiosity from hip-hop heads who wanted to hear something different. And then later, when Jive Records signed them, when they released the Low End Theory, suddenly everyone remembered those early underground singles. But that early work, that foundation, that's what made A Tribe Called Quest possible. Number 7, EPMD. That stands for Eric and Parrish Making Dollars.
EPMD is in town. Total chaos. No mass confusion.
In 1988, this Long Island duo released Strictly Business on an independent label called Fresh Records. And here's what's fascinating about EPMD. They proved that you didn't need a major label to create something special. Eric Sermon and Parrish Smith handled production, distribution, and everything in between. They pressed their own vinyl, they distributed it themselves. They created a blueprint for independent hip-hop that would influence Def Jam's entire business model. Production was minimalist but effective. Just funk samples, boom-bap beats, nothing fancy. But it worked. EPMD's approach, lean, efficient, self-directed, became the template for how underground hip-hop operates. Reportedly, they sold approximately 40 to 80,000 copies of Strictly Business in 1988. Underground circulation. No major retailer, no MTV, but enough to build a following. Legacy. Later, when they signed to major labels, they already had the respect of every underground hip-hop head in America. They came in already established. Number 8, Nice and Smooth. Greg Nice and DJ Smoothness. In 1989,
The barrier, nice and smooth, and it's smooth and nice. I'm the beef, yo, I'm the rice. My name's
these New York cats released a single called Smooth Operator on a 12-inch vinyl. And when I say underground, I mean underground. This record had zero commercial ambition. It was just Greg Nice and DJ Smoothness doing what they loved, making smooth, laid-back New York hip-hop that made you feel like you were chilling in a Manhattan loft at 3 in the morning. The production was jazzy, the rhymes were clever but not ostentatious. Nothing was trying to blow up, nothing was trying to be commercial, it was just good. Reportedly, they pressed approximately 30 to 50,000 copies of this single for underground circulation. Club DJs picked it up, radio heads picked it up, but mainstream didn't care. Influence years later, when Nice and Smooth got major label deals, hip-hop heads were like, oh, those guys, we've been listening to them for years. They had already built their reputation underground. They came into the mainstream with credibility already locked in. Number 9, Lord Finesse. This New York producer came out of nowhere in 1989 and 80-90.
So wannabes in competition, beware of Lord Finesse. the funky technician.
With a sound that was pure underground hip-hop, funky technician that was the sound, jazz funk samples layered over boom bap beats, minimalist production that was actually genius. Craft. Lord Finesse represents what happens when someone is so focused on making perfect beats that they completely ignore commercial viability. This man wasn't trying to get on MTV. He wasn't trying to chase trends. He was just trying to make the best hip-hop production possible. Recognition. The album reportedly sold approximately 20 to 40,000 copies in underground circulation only. Sleeping Bag Records pressed limited runs. Hip-hop heads who knew about underground hip-hop knew about Lord Finesse. Everybody else? They had no idea this man existed. But every underground hip-hop producer who came after Lord Finesse, they studied his production methodology. They learned from his approach. He's one of those artists where the real impact is invisible to mainstream audiences, but massive to anyone who actually knows hip-hop. Number 10, Stetsasonic. Out of Brooklyn, New York in 1986.
And get this clear, I'm rolling with the band of the year, and we're in full gear.
5 young musicians decided to do something radical. They decided to make hip-hop with live instruments, not just beats and samples, actual drums, actual bass, actual instrumentation. Innovation in full gear was their statement, and it was absolutely, completely rejected by the commercial rap industry. Why? Because the rap industry didn't know how to market live band hip-hop. It didn't fit the formula. It wasn't Run DMC. It wasn't LL Cool J. It was something completely different. Stetsasonic pressed limited vinyl runs. They built a following among musicians and experimental hip-hop heads, but mainstream walked right past them. Decades later, hip-hop historians would realize that Stetsasonic wasn't just making underground music, they were predicting the future. They were showing that hip-hop could incorporate live musicianship in ways that wouldn't become mainstream until the 1990s. Number 11, Boogie Down Productions, the early singles, before Criminal Minded became a classic.
Bronx, you might not live, cause you're in South Bronx, South Bronx.
Before KRS-One became conscious rap royalty. There was South Bronx, 1986, just a 12-inch single produced by DJ Scott LaRock, and it was revolutionary. KRS-One wasn't just rapping, he was making a statement. He was saying, this is where hip-hop comes from. Not from Manhattan, not from Queens, from the South Bronx. South Bronx started a war of words with MC Shan. It started something called the Bridge Wars. And that single, that underground 12-inch, changed how hip-hop understood itself. It changed the geography of hip-hop consciousness. The single reportedly sold approximately 25 to 50,000 copies in underground circulation, no major promotion, just word of mouth among Bronx heads. But that was enough to establish KRS-One as a force. Legacy. Every single conscious rapper, every Bronx proud rapper, every MC who ever said, keep it real, they're all standing on the foundation of that 1986 single. KRS-One proved you didn't need a hit record to change hip-hop, you just needed truth. Number 12, Just Ice. Out of New York in 1987, this underground warrior pressed a record called Original Gangster. Years before Ice-T would use that exact title to make a mainstream album, but Just Ice was doing this when nobody was listening. Just Ice was making gangster rap when mainstream America didn't even know what that meant. Produced by Cool DJ Red Alert, Just Ice's album was supposed to be something special. It was supposed to challenge the very foundations of what hip-hop could talk about, but it didn't chart. It didn't get radio play. It just existed in the underground, spreading through vinyl circulation and DJ recommendations. Reportedly, Just Ice sold approximately 20 to 40,000 copies of Original Gangster in underground circulation. No major label backing, no MTV push, just pure underground status. Influence _ legacy. Years later, when Ice-T's Original Gangster became a phenomenon, hip-hop historians would remember that Just Ice did it first. This man pioneered the sound that would define West Coast hip-hop influence on the East Coast, but he never got the credit. He stayed underground. Number 13, Grandmaster Flash and Melle. Now here's where this list gets real.
Healthy. All my children in the daytime, Dallas at night, can't even see the game or the Sugar Ray fight.
Grandmaster Flash and Melle. These were hip-hop legends. They created the message. They were on MTV when MTV meant everything. They were mainstream success stories in the early 1980s. But here's the thing, by the mid to late 1980s, the mainstream had moved on. And these legends, they found themselves back in the underground, pressing 12-inch singles on independent labels, doing club gigs, releasing records that nobody outside the underground heard. This isn't a story of rising from the underground, This is a story of legendary status declining back to the underground. By 1985 to 1989, Grandmaster Flash's later work reportedly sold approximately 10 to 25,000 copies per single. Regional circulation. Underground hip-hop fans only. Philosophy. Why include this? Because it shows something important. The underground isn't always about discovering the unknown. Sometimes it's about watching legends fade. Grandmaster Flash proved you could be a pioneer and still end up underground. But here's the beautiful part. The underground remembered him. The underground hip-hop heads never forgot what Grandmaster Flash created. He mattered. 13 albums, 0 mainstream recognition, infinite impact. This is what underground hip-hop actually means. It's not always about being too weird or too experimental. Sometimes it's about being too real, too conscious, too innovative, too far ahead of the curve. The mainstream music industry looked at these albums and said, "This doesn't fit our formula, we don't know how to sell this." And the underground said, "Perfect, that's exactly why we need it." These recordings became the blueprint for everything hip-hop is today. Every conscious rapper learned from KRS-One. Every storyteller learned from Slyke Reich. Every jazz fusion head learned from A Tribe Called Quest and the Jungle Brothers. Every producer studied Lord Finesse's beats. But here's the thing, most people have no idea these albums exist. Most people don't know this history. If you're watching this right now, you are one of the few people who's going to remember this list. You're going to go find these records. You're going to listen to them. You're going to understand where your favorite modern rappers got their foundation. And when you do, when you discover these albums, you're going to realize something important. Hip-hop's greatest moments often happen when nobody's watching. The underground is where the real revolution takes place. If you made it this far, thank you. These are the artists that hip-hop history forgot. But you're not forgetting. Subscribe to Hip Hop Legends Archives. We're dedicated to bringing underground hip-hop out of the underground and into the light where it belongs.